Hello, I'm State Representative Jim Buchy from the 84th House District. Welcome to Ohio in Focus.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Ohio in Focus, a program that brings state government to you. I'm your host, Brad Miller, and I'm joined today by State Representative Jim Buchy, who serves the 84th House District, which includes all of Mercer County and parts of Audelaize, Darke, and Shelby counties. Representative, as always, good to see you again.
Thank you, Brad. It's great to be here.
We're going to touch on a number of topics, as we always do. One thing we've really talked about a lot on previous episodes is water quality, and today in particular we'll talk about dredging. Can you first tell the viewers what we're talking about when we use the term dredging?
Well, you have in my district the distressed watershed of Grand Lake St. Mary's, and there is equipment on that lake year-round that is digging up from the bottom sediment that is full of nutrients that is creating or contributing to the growth of algae. Same thing on Lake Erie. We have nutrient-rich soil that's on the bottom of the lake and is coming into the lake, and so we have to keep it dredged to kind of remove as much nutrients as we can, while at the same time, on the western edge, for example, in Toledo, we have to have that harbor deep enough to handle the big ships that come in there. Brad, there's between 700 and 800 ships that come into the shipyard at Toledo every year. So that Maumee Bay area in Toledo has to be deep enough so that those ships can get in and out of there.
Are there some negative consequences, maybe you touched on this, of dredging, and how is it monitored?
Well, of course, they're always monitoring it's monitored by really in essence, by the amount of algae that shows up, and that's what we're trying to do, is reduce the nutrient load so that we can reduce the growth of algae.
How do you foresee this issue? I know the House has touched on this
Yes.
with what was passed and signed
Senate
into
Bill
law, Senate Bill 1. Can you talk about that bill briefly?
Well, obviously, what we're doing is we're creating a climate that's conducive to putting less phosphorus into Lake Erie. This is for the watershed up there, and the vast majority of the phosphorus that is going into the Maumee River is chemical fertilizer, but there's some manure as well. And so we're doing everything we can to reduce that going in. The big issue in Senate Bill 1 is to stop applying manure on frozen ground in the winter and so on. And while at the same time we're getting applicators licensed to do a better job with the chemical fertilizer. So the whole idea is to reduce the input of phosphorus into the lake.
And that bill was signed into law by Governor Kasich last month. This month is May, so the snow is all gone, fortunately. This winter wasn't as treacherous as last, but still had some ice and snow, obviously, which usually lets us see some of the remnants, excuse me, on the roadways of potholes and certain cracks and things. Local governments and municipalities have ways of dealing with that, and they usually form schedules for when they're going to fix these roads. I understand in Darke County in particular, the paving schedule has been extended by a certain amount of time, 10 years to 17 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, the engineer, who by the way is very good, he's one of the best engineers in the state, because the overall quality of our roads and bridges. I mean, bridges is a big issue right now, and Darke County has, I think, only 1 or 2 bridges that don't meet standards right now. So the engineer, Mr. Serber, has done a great job in maintaining the roads. His issue is that he says he doesn't have enough money, and he'd like to, which of course is local government normal at this point because of the way we're growing the economy. But the truth of the matter is that he set that schedule back so he could get more usage of the dollars he has available. Now, that's good in the short term, but maybe down road it's going to cost a lot more on those 17-year jobs. So hopefully the situation will be better so he doesn't have to live with that. Having said that, he does have a very big surplus. He operates on about a $5 million budget, and currently he has about $5 million in reserve. So the point is that he could be doing more road work than he is right now. Now, having said that, we also have a reduction in all engineers' money. They get the money from road tax and license plate sales. And so hopefully with the price of oil being less, that means this summer, for example, the driving on the roads is going to hopefully be a lot more, and which means gas tax revenues will go up, and that'll be better for everybody. But we have had some tremendous cost of reduction of cost of doing business. I mean, the price of diesel fuel to run those trucks and tractors and lawn equipment and so on has dropped dramatically, so that's a big savings. And there's been refunds in workers' compensation, and I mean, there's just a lot of lower costs that are coming into all local government, including the engineer's office. So that kind of stretches the dollars out as well. When you're not spending as much for fuel, that gives you more money to put more asphalt down. Now, the big thing I found out in discussion with Engineer Serber is that the price of asphalt hasn't dropped appreciably. They're charging the same a year ago as they did this year, roughly the same this year as they did a year ago. And my question is, well, how do you get that? Because the price of oil is roughly half of what it was by the barrel. So we're asking some questions right now to try to get to the bottom of that. So that's basically what's going on with the roads in your question about Darke County, and I'm appreciative of the job that he's doing with the dollars he has, and I know that our roads will stay in good shape in Darke County. He has 521 miles of road. I think that's more miles of any county in the state.
You touched on state and local finances, and we'll move right along to something that has been occupying the House for some time. Since early February, the state operating budget from Governor Kasich's proposal that he gave to the House, it was passed out of the House late last month. Can you touch on some of the things? I know there are a lot of changes as far as like the tax system and structure that the governor's proposal has compared to what the House passed. Can you touch on some of those as well as some of the other differences? Sure.
Well, the big thing, of course, is that when the governor presented the budget, which overall is a very good budget, he has some suggestions for increasing some taxes and moving some things around, to make sure they could have a 20% reduction in the state personal income taxes, which is I support wholeheartedly. I mean, the personal income tax is the most onerous tax we have, and that'll do more for spurring the economy than anything. And so, but having said that, the fact is that with current economy in place and the direction we're going, without anything, we're going to see growth in our economy of $500 million each year for the next 2 years. And frankly, as we continue to create more jobs, that number will only grow. So the House felt that we don't need to change any of the tax structure to continue to grow, and so we have provisions in the budget that are going to continue a more rapid growth of the economy. So that's the reason that we removed all tax changes in the governor's proposal, and that's huge. And still are giving, I think, a 6 or 7% reduction in the personal income tax with all that done. So that is huge, and I support that very much.
So it's currently in the Senate. What are some of the other highlights that you'd like to touch on, or where do you see this going? It needs to be passed, or rather signed into law by the end of June.
Sure. Well, of course, the big issue and one of the two biggest areas in state government is education. And of course, there's been just a tremendous philosophical debate about the PARCC tests, which goes to the Common Core that Ohio accepted in prior to 2010. And so there's provision in the budget that takes away the funding for PARCC. I mean, 80% of administrators in this state don't want PARCC tests. They've been through 2 rounds of it, and they don't like it, and I don't either. We have the ability, we have the best education minds anywhere in Ohio, and they have always done a good job, and they can do a good job to set in place the standards in the curriculum and the tests to that makes us extremely competitive. And so we stopped the funding for the park test so that they're going to look for other ways to test the children. And I will tell you also that for the viewers here, that we have a portal that you can look up. It's tinyurl.com/ourpathway-education. You want to find out about this, join me as we learn more about Park and Common Core. So if the viewers will check that out, and we're going to keep communicating with that all the time. And that'll help us get to where we want to go.
And that information will be at the bottom of the screen as well. We'll touch on the state testing briefly. First, I believe it was last month, we talked about a tax quiz that some Ohioans were facing. Is there some update you have?
Oh, I forgot to tell you that. And I got off on the park testing and Common Core. Yes, the tax commissioner, and for all the right reasons, we're trying to root out fraud. And I have had a personal experience in my family with that, where somebody fraudulently filed a tax return, got money back, and my family member had to go through an awful lot of hoops to prove that they didn't send the money to the right person, or the tax return wasn't the right one. Having said that, I support the tax commissioner's efforts to root out fraudulent filers of tax. But by the same token, it can be done, I believe, in a different manner that is not so onerous for the people who legitimately have money coming back. So they're from the state on their taxes. So there's language in the budget, as it is in the Senate now, that will ask the tax commissioner to come to the legislature and review the tax questionnaire for next year. And so that perhaps they can get to where they need to go to find out who the legitimate taxpayer is without having to ask so many questions. So that's a plus, in my opinion. It still allows us to go after the cheaters while at the same time protecting the legitimate taxpayers to make sure they get their money back on a timely basis without a lot of hassle.
We have a couple minutes left. We'll close with the state testing, the park testing, which we talked about before. You mentioned some of the feedback you've gotten from constituents and administrators in your district. Can you touch on that and also talk about some of the legislation, either inside the budget or in other pieces of legislation?
Sure. Well, of course,
that have been touched on that.
Thank you for asking, Brad. I was the lead sponsor of House Bill 7, which put everything into a holding pattern, basically to give safe harbor to the schools, the administrators, the students, the teachers, everybody, while we sort through this thing and see what we can do to make it better. And then we have a couple of bills that are working their way through House Bill 138, which does the same thing for the second half of the, there's Part 1 and 2 tests that go on. So House Bill 138 is in the hopper, and we passed out House Bill 74, which basically is going to eliminate Park altogether. And that, in my opinion, is steps in the right direction because we just need to focus on classroom instruction and not all the burdens that we're putting on the children with these high-stakes testing.
So quite a bit to keep an eye on in the coming weeks and months. As we close with about a minute left, you know the drill. Share with your constituents back home how they can reach you here in Columbus.
Well, of course, I'm accessible calling area code 614-466-6344 and Rep 84 at ohiohouse.gov, and then take my survey. Please, we'd like to hear from you because that helps me work for you better here at tinyurl.com/Buchy May 2015.
Representative, as always, good to see you. Thanks for sitting down with us.
Thanks for having me.
And we look forward to seeing you again on the next edition of Ohio in Focus, a program that brings state government to you. Thanks for watching.